All right, so welcome to Bio 110. You've hopefully at this point, you have to have at this point done your entry verification prereq, so that's great. Let's talk about how you access labs in this online platform. So, as a online student, you are still required to do hands-on laboratory experiments. As such, part of your course registration fee was the cost of a lab kit. Your lab kit needs to be picked up at the bookstore. So, if you go to the college store on the Coastal's website. You'll see online lab kit information right at the top there. There's some general information for you. Do not open the kit if you are debating dropping the class. So if you open the kit, you are not able to return it. If you leave the kit sealed, you could return it if you decide to withdraw from the course. So if you're thinking about it, if you're like, maybe I want a seated class, or maybe something came up this semester, keep that in mind, because if you take the class again, you do need to repurchase that lab kit. So it's like a one time, it's not like a one time and you can take it again later. Okay. So you should go and pick up your lab kit within the first 2 weeks of class. If you do not pick up your lab kit in that first 2 weeks, then you are not able to complete the course and you may be withdrawn due to the inability to complete the labs assigned to you. If you need your lab kit shipped to you, so if you're taking this class since it's online elsewhere, make sure that you do reach out to the bookstore and follow their directions on doing their online orders. So there's a way for you to go. You would hit accept. You could go to the class. You could say biology, let's say Bio 110 lab, and then you would say online. And they would have information here, you would have it included, and then they'll have information about shipping that to you. So do make sure that you go through that if you haven't. But once you have your lab kit, or even if you're going to get your lab kit, maybe you're not picking up the first week of class, that's okay, but try to do it sooner rather than later. You will go down to the bottom of your module's landing page and you will see the lab materials. Okay. Lab materials is going to be where you're going to find information about lab preparation and homework, introductions, setup, that sort of thing. Labs are expected to take in a seated class. You're supposed to be in the class 3 hours a week in lab. That does not include any sort of pre-work, which is usually reading through the lab and answering pre-lab questions. And it does not include any post-lab work, which would be assignments, homework questions, filling out graphs and tables, that sort of thing. In lab, you are doing the experiments. As such, your online labs are set up in much the same way. So what you'll see is that for each lab, except for the lab kit inventory, you have a getting started and a getting started evaluation. Or a lab kit inventory doesn't have that, but you'll have math and graphing prep and math and graphing prep evaluation. And that was hard to say, okay? The getting started would be the experimental portion itself. This is what you are spending time in class doing. So this could be doing those pre-lab questions, doing the readings, and then doing the experiments themselves. So let me just clear this out. This is not liking me doing this because I've gone through this a couple times, but you as a student will have a accepting agreements term, and then you will get taken to this getting started page. This is your very first lab that you're supposed to do because this is getting you used to this online platform and this overall perspective of what you would see. You'll come in here and you'll see exploration overview, which is going to give you your objectives. This is what you're learning. The time, they always like default the time to 2 hours. It should not take you 2 hours to do this lab. Okay, you're going through the lab. All right. And then they always have these test your knowledge questions. These are questions that are going to ask you to see what you know and what you are going to learn. So these are kind of like pre-lab questions in my seated class. You're going to be answering those as if you are, do I know this? And, how did I do? Okay. Then you'll have some sections to read. You'll see that as you finish things, green check marks arise. You could also click the next page down in the bottom. This is walking you through a set of directions for what you're going to need to be able to do in this class. And then you can go down to experimentation. The experimentation is the part that I've defined as the lab portion. So the exploration and the evaluation would be your pre-lab and post-lab in a seated class. Experimentation would be the actual exercises that you're doing in a seated class. So keep that in mind when you're planning your time management for Bio 110 online labs. You should always be working in advance. Labs are open in advance. I strongly recommend, since labs are due at a particular day and time, trying to work on those labs, at least reading through and doing some of the setup, exploration, overview, that sort of thing, at least a week in advance, especially because some labs do have time components where you set something up and you have to wait 24 hours to get results. So if you see that, if you've gone through and you've looked at your exercises, if you've looked at this lab in advance, you can plan your time out accordingly. That's one of the biggest things that students have struggled with in the past, and one of the things that they have suggested that I make very clear to new students is that you need to plan labs in advance. This is one of your big time management aspects of Bio 110. So you'll see that here's an exercise. This would be your experiment, the exercise being the experiment, okay? You're going to do the things that they tell you to do. These sorts of things, uploading a file, are going to be what you are graded on, okay? And then the same thing with exercise 2, you will be graded on your answers to these questions, your answers to the things, uploading the correct data, and that sort of thing. Once you've completed your experiment itself, you can hit quit and save. If you haven't answered questions, it might yell at you. I'm the teacher, so it won't yell at me. And then you could go down, and after you've done that one, you could do the getting started evaluation, okay? The getting started evaluation is your post-lab questions. These are your questions that are checking that you learned what those objectives were identifying. So you can say start. You will not be able to change your answers, so you're going to say, okay, submit assignment. Oh, maybe I didn't do that. I didn't answer all the questions. Okay, let me go back and let me say, okay, next. Oh, look, here's my next question, right? Next. Make sure you answer all of those. If you try to quit and save, that's fine. You can go back into it later. Okay, I can go back and like continue working. But if I were to hit, so here's resume, right? You can keep doing that. I'm totally cool with that. But when you hit submit the assignment, what you've completed is what is submitted and graded. So do make sure that you're going through and answering all of the questions that are assigned to you. This first one is like true or false kind of questions, but some of the ones later will ask you to interpret your results or explain why you think you got what you got, that sort of thing, because you are going to be, as a student, doing these labs and trying to understand why you're doing them. So some of them get a little bit more, right? You will have for every lab, again, aside from the lab kit inventory, you have a setup, the pre-lab, so the overview, and then the experimentation. So you're going to have that every single time for each lab, and then sometimes you'll have multiple labs due in a week. Currently, there aren't any due dates set here because that depends on your instructor and the dates that they have assigned. If you're in a class with me, labs are always due on Thursdays, but some instructors prefer to have labs due on like Sundays. But again, you should always be working in advance. You should be working well in advance, at least reading through, planning your time out accordingly and appropriately, setting yourself up for success in that way. When you do get the lab kit, do make sure that you go through the lab kit inventory with a fine-tooth comb. You need to make sure that everything that you're supposed to have is in that lab kit and is functional. If you have questions about any of the items themselves, like if you get something and you're not sure what it is, take a picture and send it to your instructor, okay? They should be able to tell you what it is. If you are missing anything or if anything is broken, do contact the Science Interactive as soon as possible. They're going to have this information here. You need to use the student support form, and you should then get those supplies sent to your house. The bookstore doesn't have extra supplies. I don't have extra supplies. Those come directly through Science Interactive as the manufacturer. If you have any problems with that, please email me, regardless of what class you are in, at larsonb@coastalcarolina.edu, because I will then reach out to my providers and make sure that you are getting the materials that you need. Please tell me what class you're in if you do ever send me an email, regardless of what class you're in, what section, whatever. If you have questions, I am the lead instructor for 110. I am the department head. I can answer those or at least get you in touch with the correct person, but you have to tell me like who you are and what class you're in. I have I think 5 sections this semester. A lot of other instructors have multiple sections. So just include that in your email. And especially if you're missing something or something is broken and you've put in this support form and haven't heard anything in then like 24 to 48 business hours. Okay. If you put something in on a Friday night at midnight, you probably won't hear from anyone until Monday. That's normal, right? But just keep in mind that that's going to be a thing. Do that inventory like ASAP. It needs to be fine tooth comb. Go through everything. And if you have any questions about anything to do with the labs, please let myself and your instructors know. You can copy me on any emails as well. But you should be able to see those labs and be able to complete them appropriately. I think that's it. If you have questions, like I said, please let me know. Have a good one.